During World War II, Japan named its fighter unit the Divine Wind, drawing a parallel between the American fleet and the Mongol invasion forces. This unit's name traces back to a 13th century legend, two storms that smashed the Mongol fleets. Here's a 10-second history overview.
Breaking news, the Mongols have invaded China.
We've invaded China,
said the Mongols.
Please respect us, or else we might invade you as well.
Okay, said Japan. So the Mongols came over, ready for war, and died in a tornado. But they tried again, and had a nice time fighting with the Japanese, but then died in a tornado.
However, modern researchers examining current weather data question the use of miracles to explain historical events. Did the divine wind really blow? If not a miracle, then what arrested the greatest army in history? In this episode, we'll uncover the truth behind the divine wind and its legacy, which shaped not just Japan but also the world. Not in 10 seconds, rather, in 20 minutes. This is the oldest surviving world map from the 13th century. Europe and Africa are depicted along its edges. The southern tip of India, the Malabar coast, is visible, but the vast interior is shown as open sea. Siam Kingdom is the old name of Thailand. This region is located in present-day central Vietnam. The map reflects the Mongol Empire's understanding of geography. By 1276, the Mongol army had crushed the Song dynasty of China, shifting the balance of power across East Asia. To complete their domination of the region, the empire prepared to avenge its earlier invasion of Japan. Once again, they targeted Hakata Port. Why target Hakata Port, again? The strait between Japan and the continent channels a relentless surge of water from the Pacific Ocean. The crossing was more demanding than the route the Romans once sailed to reach Britain. And in the 13th century, with navigation still limited, there were only 3 practical sea routes, and all of them ended at Hakata Port. The first and safest route was from Korea via Tsushima Island. On a clear day, Korea could be seen from Tsushima Island with the naked eye. The total distance of island hopping route was around 150 kilometers, and each hop took about a day. In winter, strong westerly winds made the route one-way. These winds pushed ships back toward Japan rather than Korea, sometimes forcing ships to wait a full month for calmer weather. The Mongols deliberately avoided this season when planning their expeditions. The second route crossed the Yellow Sea from Ningbo Port. Ningbo is an international port city. It is located near Shanghai. This route was direct but riskier. Records of envoy vessels up until the 9th century show an 80% success rate. The third and longest route ran from Ningbo Port via the Okinawa Islands. This route was used as a backup when relations with the Korean kingdoms deteriorated or when ships went off course during the Yellow Sea crossing. No matter which route was chosen, they all converged on Hakata. Hakata was one of the few ports large enough to receive fleets. It served as an essential gateway between the continent and the Japanese islands. However, their goal was not just a voyage, it was war. They also had to supply the army with food and equipment. The modern concept of logistics did not yet exist. To invade enemy territory 150 kilometers away, an army had only one option: to capture and plunder cities for supplies. Hakata Port is adjacent to a built-up area. Moreover, the Zaifu, the administrative center governing the region, stood behind them. Capturing the Zaifu was the true objective. Taking over their governing functions would make conquering Japan a concrete reality. Together, Hakata and Zaifu could provide an invading army with everything it needed. Without these, the expeditionary force would collapse under its own weight. This strategic structure did not change until steamships appeared in the 19th century. Now, let's return to the timeline. The Mongols assembled 2 armies. The first, known as the Eastern Route Army, consisted of about 40,000 troops who traveled on 900 ships from the Mongol Empire and the Koryo Kingdom of Korea. After sustaining significant losses in the previous campaign, the king requested an exemption from sending troops a second time. But his request was denied. The second force, the Southern Route Army, was enormous. It consisted of 100,000 soldiers who traveled on 3,500 ships. Curiously, they carried many farming tools. This suggests that they intended to settle in Japan after conquering it, perhaps leaving prisoners of war from the fallen dynasty behind. The total number of Japanese troops remains uncertain. Records show that reinforcements were mobilized in Kyoto, the capital, but they did not arrive in time. On May 3, 1281, 7 years after the first invasion, the Eastern Route Army set sail from Happo Port, in southern Korea. However, at this moment, the Mongols faced an unexpected setback when the newly appointed commander of the Southern Route Army fell ill, delaying the entire campaign. Consequently, the Eastern Route Army was forced to wait nearly half a month on the coast to coordinate with the Southern Route Army before advancing. On May 21, Tsushima Island fell to the invaders. 5 days later, on May 26, Iki Island fell as well. Neither island received any reinforcements. In early June, the Eastern Route Army split its forces. One detachment advanced eastward and landed on Japan's main island, where it was annihilated. The main body pressed onto Hakata Bay, where they encountered a massive fortification, a 20-kilometer-long, 2-meter-high stone wall along the shoreline. The wall was designed to impede the enemy's progress through the unstable sand while allowing Japanese to shoot arrows from above. Unlike the first invasion, when the Mongols gained a foothold on the first day, the Japanese prevented any landings this time. A record still exists praising a samurai who fought bravely outside the wall. Some Mongols disliked the wall and landed Tanegashima Island, located at the northern edge of the bay. On the night of June 6, Japanese warships launched a raid. Several Mongol vessels were set ablaze, and hundreds of Mongol soldiers perished. From June 8 onward, the Mongols on Tanegashima Island attempted to advance inland. Their advance stalled after an offensive launched by Japanese troops from land and sea. The Mongols withdrew from Hakata Bay to Iki Island. By then, the suffocating summer heat had ignited an outbreak of disease aboard their ships, and nearly 3,000 men perished. On June 18, the long-delayed Southern Route Army finally departed Ningbo Port, sailing for Iki Island, their rendezvous point. By late June, they reached Japanese waters. On June 29, part of the Mongol force clashed with Japanese troops on Iki Island and suffered losses. On July 2, the Mongols retreated from Iki Island to Hirado Island. By July 27, the two armies regrouped and set their sights once again on Hakata Bay and the Japanese headquarters at Dazaifu. Between July 27 and 28, the Japanese launched a major nighttime raid against the Mongols on Takashima Island. At dawn, they withdrew. Then, on the night of July 30, disaster struck. The Mongols had packed their ships together in anticipation of a nighttime raid when a hurricane hit their fleet. The vessels smashed into one another. Out of approximately 4,400 ships, only 200 survived. On the 5th day of the leap month of July, the surviving officers fled, abandoning their men. Those left behind were cut down, and some 30,000 were taken as prisoners. Today, excavations are underway on the seabed off the coast of Takashima Island, where the hurricane struck. The remains of Mongol ships lost to the waves over 700 years ago have been uncovered. Analysis of the divine winds. Since the Middle Ages, it has been widely believed that Japan's victory was due to a divine wind sent by the gods. However, this belief in a miracle has been re-evaluated in modern times in light of our scientific understanding of historical storms. After all, Japan is no stranger to natural disasters, not only earthquakes, but also hurricanes or typhoons. According to the Japan Meteorological Agency, an average of 25 typhoons form each year, based on data from 1991 to 2020. Roughly one-third of them inflict damage. During the second invasion in 1281, the Mongol fleet lingered at sea for 3 months, right in the middle of typhoon season. It was hardly surprising that they eventually encountered a devastating storm. What is remarkable is that they had gone so long without being hit by one. So, what truly happened during the first invasion of 1274? The Mongol army is said to have been caught in a typhoon on October 20th, November 26th by today's calendar. Yet on that very day, the aristocrat's diary, Kanchuki, records sunny weather in Kyoto. This tiny contradiction went unexplained for centuries. Then, beginning with Hidetoshi Arakawa's pioneering 1958 study, meteorologists, not historians, brought new clarity to the issue. Their analysis revealed a very different picture of what may have unfolded. On the 18th, the strong winds are thought to have been a winter monsoon, also known as a kogarashi. This wind blows when a high-pressure system is to the west and a low-pressure system is to the east. On the 19th, the pressure pattern weakened, allowing radiative cooling to occur overnight. This process absorbs heat from the Earth's surface and releases it into space. As a result, frost was recorded around the region the following morning, on the 20th. This winter weather pattern is still common in Japan today. In other words, under these conditions, it is highly unlikely that a typhoon occurred during the first invasion. The meteorologists have concluded that the typhoon theory should be rejected. Keeping this in mind, let us now turn to the three historical records that gave rise to the legend of a storm during the first Mongol invasion. The first record comes from the Korean chronicle The History of Koryo. During the retreat from the initial invasion, the chronicle notes that there was heavy wind and rain, the battleship hit rocks, and many were destroyed. Soldiers fell into the water and drowned. The waters around Tsushima are notoriously dangerous due to their strong currents. In winter, the atmospheric pressure pattern, as stated before, brings strong winds from the Korean peninsula. These winds push sailing ships toward Japan rather than Korea, making navigation treacherous. Therefore, it is plausible that shipwrecks occurred during the retreat. The second record of the event appears in the mentioned aristocrat's diary, Kanchuki. It notes, suddenly, adverse winds blew in, carrying them back to their homeland. Later generations linked this adverse wind to the storm in the history of Koryo that destroyed the Mongol fleet. This is hearsay about an event 600 kilometers away, and the author was not an eyewitness. The two accounts refer to the same event remains uncertain. Rather, the adverse winds prevented them from returning. The third account comes from the religious text Hachiman Gudokoin, whose title translates to "Even a foolish child can understand the teachings of the god." It records that 30 divine beings shot arrows to drive away the Mongol army after the battle. Though this passage does not mention the actual word storm or wind, it later served as the basis for the story of the divine wind. So why did this interpretation become so widespread? The answer lies in the economic situation of the Kamakura shogunate, the military government of the time. This war was defensive. The government could not confiscate enemy land and use it to reward samurai for fighting in battles. These conditions suggest that the government promoted the narrative that Japan had been saved by the divine wind, that is, the emperor's prayers. Thus, the government sought to justify the meager rewards granted to its warriors. In times of national crisis, the emperor, together with priests and monks, led urgent prayers. But this narrative eclipsed the samurai, who shed blood on the battlefield and made sacrifices of their own. Over time, this tension led to the downfall of the samurai government. The effect of the invasions. The Mongol navy, shattered by the loss of 100,000 soldiers and 4,000 warships, was in ruins. Despite the outcomes, Emperor Kublai Khan refused to abandon his dream. He ordered preparations for another 4,000 ships for a third invasion. Oak and other hardwoods essential for shipbuilding had already been depleted, and they take 150 years to mature. Yet the new project demanded vast amounts of timber. The mountains around the capital were stripped bare, and even trees from temples and tombs were felled. When both the losses and the recovery are counted, the toll reached 8,000 hectares of forest, an area the size of Berlin. Discontent spread, riots erupted, and at last, the reckless plan was abandoned. The collapse of the Mongol navy disrupted maritime order across East Asia. Piracy flourished along the sea routes between China and Japan. Tsushima, Iki, and Hirado, the islands hit hardest by the invasions, became pirate strongholds. Just 3 years after the second invasion, Regent Hojo Tokimune passed away. He had dedicated his life to fighting the Mongols. Meanwhile, Japan was still bolstering its defenses against a potential third invasion and never launched its planned counteraction. Following Emperor Kublai's passing, his son Timur redirected the empire's foreign policy toward conciliation with neighboring states, such as Vietnam and Thailand. Japan, however, stood apart. Its spectacular victory had hardened its diplomatic stance, causing the nation to choose isolation over the vast economic benefits of engaging with Europe via Asia. Centuries later, future Chinese emperors devised similar plans against Japan. Yet the memory of Kublai's defeat loomed large, a cautionary shadow that kept those plans forever unrealized. The butterfly effect of the invasions. The Mongol Empire created an interconnected world in which merchants could safely travel from Europe to Asia. One such merchant was Marco Polo, who met Kublai Khan and learned about the mysterious land of Nihonkoku. He likely heard the Chinese pronunciation,
日本国
In his biography, this eastern land became
赤本谷
an island of gold with a golden palace. Later editions rendered the name as
Zipangri.
According to one theory, this is how the modern international name Japan was born. Christopher Columbus, an avid reader of Polo's biography, filled its margins with notes. Inspired by Polo and probably guided by Paolo Toscanelli's map, Columbus set sail in search of the fabled El Dorado, or Chipango. Upon landing on Hispaniola Island on December 24, 1492, Columbus recorded the words of the islanders, "There is a large amount of gold in Chipango." The first Europeans to experience true Chipango were in 1544, 50 years later. A Portuguese adventurer named Fernão Mendes Pinto was stranded on Tanegashima Island. It is said that he carried matchlock guns. A lord purchased 2 of the guns, and Japanese swordsmiths, who were skilled in ironworking, quickly reproduced them. Within a few years, Japan had become one of the world's largest producers of guns. They didn't forget to upgrade them in Japanese ways. These guns made Japan's wars more intense and shorter. Pinto later joined the Jesuit order and helped convert the warlord Otomo Sorin. This Christian lord is remembered as Don Francisco. Who guided Pinto to Japan? It was a pirate king, one of many who rose to power after the collapse of the Mongol navy. In 2005, 2 Chinese teaching staffs destroyed the Pirate King's monument because they considered the king a traitor. The Pirate King's name was Wang Shi, a notorious figure in the seas once dominated by Japanese pirates. He is categorized as a Japanese pirate, wacko. The teaching staff seemed to demand that the pirate possess a modern sense of national belonging. To truly understand this battle, you must see it through his eyes. His vision has been immortalized in a single masterpiece. It was created by a humble soldier who fought on the front lines. With pure grit, he transformed his life, rising from obscurity to fame. For centuries, his painting has been regarded as the most compelling eyewitness account of the battle. Who was this man? What did he see? In the next episode, we unveil the secrets of this art, legendary Japanese national treasure.
最後まで見てくれてありがとう。
Help motivate us to make more videos by liking and subscribing. Thank you for watching!